We haven't covered lists themselves yet, but you've seen them a couple times by now. We'll cover them more in Unit 4. For now though, let's perform the same task as before, but instead of getting numbers one by one from the user, let's have them provided in a list. That's our list of numbers here on line 3. When our code runs, it runs line 3, creates a variable called list of numbers, and assigns it this list. Don't worry too much about the syntax yet, again we'll cover it later. Just know that each of these numbers is a different number in the list. It's as if the variable has multiple values assigned to it. That's what a list really is. It's a single variable name with multiple values assigned to it. Then again, the code creates the variable sum and gives it the value 0. And then on line 8, it starts the for loop again. Notice that the syntax for a for each loop is actually pretty much the same as the syntax for our plain for loop. For starts it off, followed by a space, then a variable name, then the word in, and instead of range, we put in the variable that has multiple values associated with it. What that for each loop essentially says is to run the indented code for each item in the list. So for every value in the list, take that value, assign it to current number, and run the code, which will mean that current number is added to sum for every single item in the list. So the contents of the loop runs once for 91, adding 91 to sum, again for 92, adding 92 to sum, again for 93, adding 93 to sum, and so on until it's run for each individual number in that list of numbers. Then on the outside of the loop, it again prints the sum divided, and in this case it divides by the length of the list, which is just a fancy way of saying the number of values in that list, which is how we would take an average. We know there are 10 numbers in the list. We know that the sum was 955, and 955 divided by 10 equals 95.5. So the way you read a for each loop like this one is to run the indented code for each item in the list given. Now you might notice this actually isn't any different than our for loop from before. That range function generated a list with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and onwards to 10. And then that list was effectively used as the list for the loop. So actually in Python, every for loop is actually a for each loop. All the range function does is generate a list of numbers from the start number to the end number. And then that becomes the list we use for our loop. Note that we can also explain the execution of this loop the same way we explain the execution of our previous loops. The loop gets started, the first value gets loaded into current number, and the loop runs with that value for that variable. When it's done, it jumps back to the loop and asks, am I done yet? Well, no, there's still more values to use. So now the second value gets loaded into current number, the indented code runs, returns to the loop, asks, am I done yet? And no, you're still not. There's still more values to do. That continues until the last value, 100, is loaded into current number. The indented code runs, jumps back to the loop, and asks, am I done yet? And in fact, now we are. There are no more values left in that loop. And so we're done. Notice that we could do this with the same kind of for loop we saw earlier. Here our code is pretty much identical. It creates the list of numbers, creates the variable sum and gives it the value 0, and then it starts our for loop. Here though, the for loop is written the way we wrote it before. The word for, a variable I, which is just going to increment every time the loop runs, the keyword in, and our range function. Range here goes from 0 to the length of the list of numbers. In other words, generate a range of numbers from 0 to how many numbers are in the list. Here, this is going to generate the list 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. It'll start at 0 and go until the length of the list of numbers, which is 10, and stop one before that, which is 9. Now, every time this loop runs, the next number from this list over here on the right will get loaded into I. The first line of this loop gets the next number in the list. It says current number equals list of number bracket I bracket. The brackets at the end are just a way of specifying which number from the list we want to get. The only trick here is that the first number in the list is called the 0th number. The second one is called the first number, the third one is called the second number, and so on. That's for reasons we'll talk about later in the course. For now, just know that the first number in the list is called the 0th number. So when this loop runs, line 7 runs, and it says to create the variable current number and set it equal to the ith number of list of numbers. I is currently 0, and so it gets the 0th number, which was 91. And now current number, which is 91, is added to our sum. The body of the loop is done running, so it returns to the top, asks, am I done yet? No, you're not, because we still have all these numbers, 1 through 9, to run on, and so it continues. Next, it loads the value 1 into I. Current number becomes list of numbers sub I. That's another way of saying the ith number. Now I is 1, and as we said, that actually corresponds to the second item in the list since the first one has the index 0. And so now current number equals 92. Then 92 is added to sum again. This iteration of the loop is done. Return to the top. Ask, am I done yet? No, you're not. You still have to run 2 through 9. Finally, we'll get to 9. 9 will be loaded into I. Current number will be the 9th number in the list of numbers, which as we know is now the last number. That last number, now current number, will be added to sum. The loop is done. It returns to the top. Asks, am I done yet? Now we are, because we've run for all the numbers in that range. So it continues. Sum is still 955, because still all those numbers in that list were added. Our length is 10, because there were 10 numbers in that list. And 955 divided by 10 is still 95.5. And that's our output. So anything we can do with a for each loop, we could also do with the for loop that we covered before. And of course that makes sense because as we just said, the for loop that we covered earlier was actually just a for each loop, using this range function to generate the list of numbers over which the for each loop iterates. If that equivalency between the for loop and the for each loop is confusing though, don't worry about it too much. The really important takeaway here is just this syntax here on line 8. The keyword for, a variable, the keyword in, and some kind of list of values. Every time that loop iterates, the next item, the next value from the list is loaded into that variable, and then it's used inside the body of that loop.